Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If we can settle down, please. Thank you very much. First of all, let me welcome Mr. Das, Mr. Tarun Das amidst us today. It's really my pleasure to welcome you. You've always been a very special person as far as I'm concerned. And you've always, you've been a guide, you've been a friend, and you've also helped me along in my journey in the field of institutions and associations. Thank you very much, Tarun, for being with us. And of course, CB, my current guide, if I may call him. He's more my boss than my guide, actually. I've known Tarun since the mid-90s. We were just talking about it. I've known him since mid-90s. And all of you in this room who've known him will agree that Tarun looks exactly the same that he did in the early 90s. And this is something, a secret. There's many of us in this room, when I look around, I think, Tarun, we'd like you to share with us, what is the secret? You haven't changed one bit.
CII.
CII. Okay. The fact that this is being done in Kolkata has a lot of relevance. Tarun started life in Kolkata way back in 1963, if my memory is correct. He started in the previous avatar of CII, and CII went through various avatars. It was originally more focused on engineering, then it became an all-industry, services and everything. And of course, it moved to Delhi. So Tarun spent till 2004 as the Director General. Then he became the Chief Mentor, and he was the Chief Mentor till 2009. So in other words, he spent a little over 40 years in CII. And that obviously makes me say that, sometimes you get confused. Tarun is better known as TD, so I'm going to use TD. Like TD is CII, CII is TD. For the 40 years that he was there, what he has built, and I'll come to that in a minute. We'll talk about that in a little while. I've worked very closely with people from CII. I haven't worked as closely as I'm currently working with CII, but during Tarun's time, I was chairman of various committees, and I did work a lot with CII. And the thing that always stood out, and even stands out today, is that everybody who works in CII is so committed, is so proud to be part of CII that you very rarely see this in the corporate world. In the corporate world, we are always benchmarking salaries, doing this, doing that. How do you keep your employee happy? Things like that. But in CII, the kind of commitment that I see, the kind of dedication that I see, and the pride that I see is phenomenal. And this has been there from the time that I have been exposed to CII, and this continues till today. They are willing to work 7 days a week. They're willing to work till late at night. They're willing to work over the weekends, and always with a smile. And I was repeatedly told that I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it in any case, that if you look around in the Secretariat of CII, a lot of the ladies are so wedded to their jobs that they actually didn't have time to get married. And there's quite a few of them in CII. And my wife repeatedly told me, don't you dare say it, but I couldn't resist it because it's so true about CII. There's one story about CII, about Tarun, that I remember. I was the president of Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries. That was some years ago. And we were celebrating the 175th year of the chamber. And as a lark, I wrote to the Prime Minister, then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, to come and be the chief guest of the event. And lo and behold, he sends me an acceptance letter. And that really sent me on a tizzy, because I didn't know, I've never done something like that. And the Secretariat at Bengal Chamber was fairly new that time. So we were all really in a tizzy. So I said, well, let me go back to my old friend, Tarun Das. So I got hold of Tarun. I said, Tarun, I've got the Prime Minister of India coming for this event. And really, what do I do? So he went full swing into it, and he says, okay, have you done this? Have you done this? He said, send me a speech. I sent him my speech. This is at the night before the Prime Minister's coming, and I get back a terse message, rubbish, who wrote it for you? So he writes a speech over at night and sends it to me around 1 o'clock or something, and there I am, supposed to look fresh for the Prime Minister next morning, and there I am trying to prepare my speech. And then I get a call around 2:33 or something like that, by which time Tarun had laid his hands on the Prime Minister's speech, what he was going to talk about. And he says, Shumat, I got bad news for you. I said, what happened now? He says, the Prime Minister is not going to say very happy things as far as West Bengal is concerned. So you better be prepared, if you remember that. Anyway, that's history. Tarun personally flew down for it, and I've been very, very grateful to him for having helped me out. He really helped me out on that. So Tarun is just this person who doesn't change, doesn't age, and forever helpful, and he's been a very good friend. We've got CB, the current Director General. CB, of course, is the one thing about CB that I really like is no matter what the pressures are, the guy's always smiling. And if you just turn around and take a look at his face now, I'm sure he's smiling. And I've seen CB do this, ridiculous things like this. He'll fly to London, do a meeting in the afternoon, catch a flight, fly all night, go to San Francisco, do a breakfast meeting, do a dinner meeting, catch on to a flight, come back to India, and then, lo and behold, he's there for the meeting in Delhi. Looks like he's just had a vacation and he's come. Fresh as ever, alert as ever. I still can't figure out how he does it. He made me once travel to Washington just to have one dinner. And I flew in, had the dinner, and came back. But I don't think CB's ever heard the end of that in terms of complaints from me. So that's CB. And these are just some comments I wanted to make about Tarun and about CB. And it's my year as a president CII has been a fantastic experience, an experience that really I will remember and cherish for a long time. I was talking about the employees of CII. I was talking about their pride. I've had guys from CII come and talk to me, Mr. Mazumdar, you've seen CII from the outside. Now that you're in the inside, what do you think? And I said, I cannot believe the amount of work you all do and all that is involved in, what you put out. And this is the kind of pride they have. CII today as an organization, without doubt, is the largest industry body. It is the largest chamber of commerce. The second one is way, way behind. I certainly hope I'm not speaking out of turn over here. Today, CII has 66 offices in India. No other chamber can brag of that. They have 8 offices abroad. They have 9 centers of excellence, and the centers of excellence started during Tarun's time. And they have a membership of over 8,000 direct members and over 200,000 indirect members. And that is the CII today that Tarun built over 40 years, which CB is now carrying forward. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a phenomenal institute that has been built, and and personally, I've learned a lot. Thank you very much, CB. May I hand it over to you now?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mazumdar, for that introductory remarks and setting the context. This meeting is all about the book, basically, and this is the third time, actually, Mr. Das and I are getting together to talk about the book. The first one was a private meeting between the CII staff, the senior staff, and you and us. The second was in Chandigarh, which was a similar type of a setting. But this is unique because this is the birthplace of CII, and so happy that you could make time to talk to us about the book, about the journey, and about what happened in those 47 years, as you steered the organization, an organization which you really made into an institution of a kind, which is so very unique. So I'll come straight, we have constraint of time, I'll come straight to some pointers and really ask you a few questions, Mr. Das, and then really open it up to the floor for everyone else to participate. But this book is all about how this amazing institution got created. This book is all about why there was this fire in the belly to create an institution of a kind that it, as Mr. Mazumdar so eloquently spoke about. So it all started, I mean, CII, as those of you who could see the book, who could read the book, have seen it's a 120-year-old institution. Having said that, when TD came into this institution, that's in 1963, the institution was there in some shape and form, and I'll leave it to him to talk about that in the course of the discussions today. But this institution at that point in time was just, if one can say, a kid on the block, one other kid on the block perhaps. But something made you and think at that point in time that yes, there was a need of another institution, when you have said in your book, when other giants existed, and CII had a dream at that point in time to perhaps become a giant. From 63 to 74, you consolidated, you built something in Calcutta, and then you wanted to move into Delhi. You and your team wanted to move into Delhi to create another institution in spite of other institutions being present. You knew very well that this is going to be a long haul, it's going to be a marathon, it's just not going to be a quick win, it's going to be a tough one. But you all chose, and then with your leadership, it was chosen that there was a need for another institution coming up. What was the need? Why did you want to build another institution when others existed? And why did you want to make a different institution altogether?
Okay, before I answer that, Chandrajit, I just want to thank you, Shumit, for being here and for all the warm things that you have said. As you said, we go back a long time, and I'm so overwhelmed to see where this year particularly you have taken CII under your leadership, because the world has become very complex. India has become very complex, and dealing with government, working with the world, I think is much more challenging than it was in my time. And to see you accepted and respected by the leadership of the government, domestically and internationally, makes one feel very good that CII has made it. But every new government is a little uncertain. Who am I going to work with? Who am I going to trust? But I think in 1.5 years and less, really, you have built trust in CII with the leadership, and that's great credit to you, and to CB.
Thank you.
So that's one. Second, great to be in Calcutta, and to do this in Calcutta. As you said, it's the birthplace. We started here, 1895, 5 companies. 1974, a few hundred companies, and you heard from Shumit what kind of scale it has risen to now. Thank you, CII, for doing this, and for Aspen India to partner you in this. By the way, Aspen India, the child of CII, because you gave birth to it 10 years ago. What drove us at that time was actually frustration in the old days. The frustration was that the environment in India was so depressing for business and industry. May have been for others also, but it was so bad. There was such a lot of controls on industry and business. There was really a deep depression amongst everybody. And the 2 engineering associations were headquartered here, one under FICCI and Indian Chamber, one under Bengal Chamber and ASSOCHAM, which was our Indian Engineering Association. One was dominated, essentially, the Indian Chamber group was dominated by the Marwari business community. Mr. B.M. Birla had set up the Engineering Association of India, and the Indian Engineering Association was essentially British and Tatas, to mention one major Indian company. And we were on parallel paths. We never agreed with each other. We did our own things. We fought with each other. We realized that, we were not getting anywhere, and we were not making any impact on Delhi. We were not making any impact on the government of India. And we were so just, wallowing in mud, as it were. And that frustration drove us towards each other, led us to negotiate a merger, which was historic. Morarji Desai, when he became Prime Minister, and he addressed us later, he said, when things are falling apart in India, here's one organization, which has actually brought people together. So this wanting to be together, to play a larger role, to be more influential, to make a change, I think that was a very big driving force. Yes, FICCI was there, very big, very powerful, very respected. But they were very often in confrontation with the government of India at that time. And rightly so, they would speak out. There were big businessmen there, big business leaders, and they would speak out and say, this is wrong, that is wrong. They were in the media all the time. And, but it wasn't making a difference. We were still in the same rut, as it were. So we wanted to create something different, and we wanted to see if we could work in partnership with government, and work without fighting with each other in public. Build trust. Can we build trust in the business community by our conduct, by our behavior? We can't expect government to change, but can we change? Can we do things differently? And that brought us all together, and the people who played a great role actually was someone from Calcutta, Mr. M.K. Jhawar, who was the president of Engineering Association of India. He went to Mr. B.M. Birla and asked him that can we think of a merger with the Indian Engineering Association, which is a very different membership and all. And Mr. B.M. Birla said, yes, go for it, because nothing else is working. And in our system, there were companies like Metal Box and others who played a very big part, Union Carbide, Tata Steel, etc. And we felt on this side that, we should try this. And on a light-hearted note, the first meeting, we couldn't meet in Calcutta because people would get to know that the enemies were meeting and what is going on here. So we met in the Oberoi, in that time Oberoi Intercontinental in Delhi, over some very strong alcoholic drinks. And that really brought people together. So Chandrajit Sen on the Indian Engineering Association side is chairman. Mrs. Sen is here. It was M.K. Jhawar on the other side. And little later, we brought in Admiral Sampson. You all have all heard of Leela Sampson, Leela Sampson's father. He was the chairman of Mazagon Docks, and the three of them, myself and one or two others, were the core group who said, okay, can we dream new dreams? Can we do something different? And so we did that. It was tough. We agreed, and the agreement was that we must go to Delhi. We can't remain in Calcutta and impact Delhi. So we had to be in Delhi, and we would not be part of FICCI, and we would not be part of ASOCHAM. So we will try our luck. Even though we were small, we had no brand, no resources, no staff, no money, nothing. We were literally penniless. So we go to Delhi and try our luck and do things differently. It worked out. In retrospect, it worked out, as he just said.
Indeed, it did, indeed. One of the things one word which is missing, and you've written about it in the beginning of the book, one word which is missing in the book is the letter I. You talked about we, and you consciously avoided the word I. But at the same time, those who have read the book, those who know about the book, and those who know about you, know that you have played a stellar role in building CII over the years, and it is you who really conceptualized it. There were many presidents in the beginning. You named quite a few of others who helped CII, of course, and there were people from outside. But the journey of CII, and you've called it a journey of CII and not the journey of CII, well, it also talks, from the book, one gets to understand or feel the pain or the pleasure that you went through as you created CII. There were tough times, good times, bad times, but I want to go back to one time, and that is the time when you were leaving Calcutta. You were one child of your parents, grown in Calcutta. Calcuttans don't like leaving Delhi, and definitely, and I'm also a Calcuttan who left Delhi at some point in time. But they don't they love staying at their home and enjoying Calcutta, and there's so much here that you can enjoy. So how did you get out of the system and agree? There must have been pressures at home, pressures within yourself, to agree to get out of Calcutta, to plant that CII flag or that AIEI flag those days into Delhi.
You know, when we did the merger and we negotiated it, I was 33, 34 years old. And the other associations, the head of the secretariat was much older and much more senior to me. And there were many senior people around, you know. I did the work, kind of doing the legwork, working with the committee. But I never expected to be offered the job. I had already become Deputy Secretary of Bengal Chamber. And as you say, everything was fine. Generally, my friends, I don't know, some of them are still here. My wife, who's here, says I have 2.5 friends. All 2.5 are here. And they're all Calcutta because we were in school here together. The only person who encouraged me and said go was my father. So actually the book is dedicated to my father, because my father was the person who told me that there was an organization called Bengal Chamber of Commerce. You know, at that time, you finish college, you're looking for a job, you don't want to work for government, you think of a company.
Correct.
You're going for interviews to Andrew Yule. I remember being interviewed by Bhaskar Mitter, you know, in Andrew Yule. I went to Hindustan Lever at that time, and so forth. So I was going through that process, and he came back from the Calcutta Club one Sunday morning. You know, there's a Bengal Chamber of Commerce, and this is 1963, and they're looking for Indians. They're all Britishers at that time. And that's how I got in there, accident, not design. And when this crunch time came, and that time P.K. Nanda was the president of Metal Box, came to me with Jhawar and said, we'd like you to take over and move to Delhi. So as you say, there was a huge resistance to this. And certainly my mother was dead against it. But my father said, you know, go. You need a job. If it doesn't work out, think of something else, but take a chance. Yeah, I want to go and see Republic Day parade. You know, I want to stay with you, and all of that. So that motivated me, that gave me the courage to go. It was tough. Delhi was a jungle. I've written about it. Delhi is a jungle. Delhi is still a jungle. You didn't have a choice, because I transferred you to Delhi. But I had a choice, but I think it was the right choice to go there. And by the way, I think when you look around, every Bengali who's outside Bengal is doing well. I don't know about Bengalis in Bengal. You know? Everybody is doing, oh, you're doing well. Some exceptions. So that's what drove me there, and I think he's the one who gave me the courage to go there.
So you said Delhi is a jungle. You have written about in the book that Delhi is a jungle. And industry was also a bad word. And I don't know whether industry probably sometimes is still a bad word. And you took several initiatives. You brought in several initiatives which no association had actually brought in those days, especially 70s, late 80s also. You brought in social area of work to be done within CII, industry to get committed towards it. But industry still had its credibility to be established. And in that jungle, to establish credibility of industry, to say that industry is good, industry is going to think about the country, was really a tough uphill sort of a climb and battle. So in that, what were the severe challenges that you faced in terms of really establishing the credibility of the industry You took 2 steps forward, you had to take 1 step back in Delhi those days. You have talked about it in the book, from the government itself, till you found somebody around in the 80s, etc., who could help and who could really work with you hand in hand to take CII and Indian industry forward. So what were those challenges, and what really happened during those years when you were trying to plant the flag of industry in CII and facing those headwinds?
Well, the first challenge was internal. Indian companies really did not want us to concentrate beyond solving problems, because there were a lot of problems. Customs duty problems, import duty problems, licensing problems, all kinds of raw materials problems, you name it, all the problems were there. And I remember chairman of Hero Group, Brij Mohan Lal, saying, just focus on solving problems. That is what we are here for. Those are the basics that you need to do. And I remember coming to the board and saying, we need to do something on education or health or whatever. And Rahul Bajaj, who is constantly in the media and one of our past presidents of CII, said, that's not our job. We are doing it from our foundations, and the government is doing it. That's not CII's job. You concentrate on basics. So one learned that, in the board meeting, when an idea was rejected, you don't argue with Rahul Bajaj. You back off. You back off and wait a few months and repackage it and bring it back. I hope you've learned that tactic. You bring it back and you get that through, through a different channel. So, because it was very important for me that we build trust in the government. The government, if it did not trust us, will not give us more space to function. And I think building trust was a very important part of the work. And we worked at it. We worked to build trust. It's very tough to build trust, very easy to lose trust. And we worked at it, and I think, and we did it through actions, not by speaking. We organized trade fairs on our own, where we gave government a platform, to come and speak. And we projected India at Davos when India was a bad product. I mean, we took India out there and we spent corporate money and raised money internally to project India there. And Shumit has been part of that. He was in Davos for many years. Rajiv is here. Rajiv was in Davos many years, and we all worked together. So when the government see you doing this, I think for the country, as it were, and of course you get something out of it yourself, and I think there is a good impact. I mean, there's a former foreign secretary sitting here, Mr. Srinivasan, and he will remember how we tried to work with him, and he gave us guidance in many things at that time. We just tried our best, and I think we were probably innocent types, we were inexperienced types, we were not quote-unquote hardened criminals. We kind of earned trust as we went along. And some people there, like Mantosh Sondhi, or later when we wanted to take members of parliament delegations along, Mrs. Krishna Bose led a delegation for us to USA, and we made all the MPs behave when we traveled around the country in Washington and New York and all. We earned trust and things happened, but we had to prove ourselves to different constituencies. I remember in 1991, Manmohan Singh asked us to organize and brief MPs on economic reforms, on the economy and all that. And I said, let me start with West Bengal, the first group of MPs, and we did it at Bongo Bhavan. And the senior most MP, I think, was Somnath Chatterjee at that time. And I remember in 1991, at that meeting in Bongo Bhavan, Somnath Chatterjee and all, because the CPM had taken a tough position on reforms at that time, that we are selling out, etc. He said, the CII is selling out the country. He said this, and I remember it in my mind. But that same Somnath Chatterjee later on, for Bengal, as chairman of WBIDC and all, did so much to promote investment in Bengal, to promote foreign investment also. But it was a process of building trust even at the political level. And I think that worked for us.
So, in one of the, in several meetings of CII at milestones, either the President of India or the Prime Minister of India once commented, and you would know that, CII is an amazing organization which has not become what it is by, by divisions, but it has come up the way by mergers, which is quite unique again. Having said that, we understand the journey, and you talked about it from the Engineering Association to an Association of Indian Engineering Industry to CEI. So then you changed from CEI to CII. So what that was a big leap. That was one big frontier that you crossed. So what happened, and what was the story behind it?
But Rajiv will remember this because he was very much central to the discussions at that time in the National Council. I think the people who were in the engineering industry wanted, by and large, to keep it as engineering. Why get the pharmaceutical guys in? Why get the services sector guys in? Why get Unilevers and food processing in? They're unknown quantities. Who are these people? We are happy. We are steel. We are metals. We are manufacturing. Just stay where we are. So there was that very strong, and the association belonged to them. They were the members. So for them to say that we will go on and take other people in was difficult. But Rajiv Gandhi, when he was Prime Minister, and we worked a lot with him at that time, he said to us on one of our meetings with him that, I want to talk to you all about all of industry. Why are you only engineering? That really sparked the thinking much more. And he said that, I like AII, which then in his time became CEI in 1986 when he was Prime Minister. And he said that, he didn't say your name should be CII, but he said you should be all industry. It took us 4 or 5 years to get agreement on that. We actually got it done in 91, but he was dead. He died in 91 and we became CII in 91 at the same time. But it was a major internal debate and conflict. I remember once we were flying to Baroda, Rajiv, Prant Talwar, who's no longer with us, myself and others. And there's a whole, in the aisle of the plane, there was a kind of a CII meeting going on about whether we should be CEI or CII, that kind of thing. So there was a heated debate about it. Who owns CII? Whose association is this? Who should it work for? Should it work for all of industry or only stay with engineering? But eventually we tipped over and took the risk, and I think that's paid off. I think that's paid off. It's opened new horizons, and you're a global organization now.
So I'm going to quickly turn to the others, but before I do that, you talked about how members, presidents really helped and really took CII along as it formed. And one of the things as a culture you brought in, I must say, presidents were involved, responsible for it too, was the synergy and the partnership that got evolved between the secretariat and the presidents and the membership. That was truly another great story for which I think CII is what it is today. In one of the recent meetings, we have a top management board, top management meetings of CII's internal secretariat that we do meet pretty often. We are 35 people at the top, and I sort of chair that meeting. And I paused one day in that meeting to say that how many men and women are there in this room? And there were 35, as I said. So they counted it was 17 plus 17, and I was the odd man out. So 17 men and 17 women. And that's a great thing. I was very happy that day. And I think today we have achieved that primarily because you really brought in that phenomenal balance in CII of working with women both inside CII and outside. I want to know a little bit, we all want to know a little bit about that, your focus and as how the ladies that you brought in so very strongly to not only the CII staff members, but also the spouses that you brought in of member companies, the presidents, so to say, which actually cemented and not only a bonding, but helped build a very strong CII.
Well, the two things you mentioned, so I'll talk about the past presidents and the presidents first. I think we've been amazingly lucky in having people in business, in industry, who gave off their time, their energy, their money, their resources, because it's an expensive business sometimes to be president of CII, as Shumit must have found out this year. They gave selflessly of their time. Rajiv took a whole year off from Nico. Pallavi is trying to revive it as a result. But Suresh Krishna took a whole year off as president when he was there. So they are remarkable people. But we had a crunch time as soon as we moved from Calcutta to Delhi. The first president was from Calcutta. The vice president was from the north. And he was a northern Indian, first generation entrepreneur. And when I landed in Delhi, I went on the 9th of November evening on a flight. I got a message that he would like me to, the vice president would like me to come to his house in the morning at 8:30. And he would like me to do that every day to brief him on what is happening in AII. Now, you know, we are rebels. We are bongs. I saw red. I said, this is not the organization of my dreams. This is not what I want to do. So I didn't go next morning. And in the evening, he called me. He said, did you get my message? I said, yes, I got your message. But you didn't come. I said, no, I didn't come. I don't think that's the way that we are going to work. I think there's another way of working. The secretariat, for me, are not bag carriers. Respectfully, I was not offensive. And so we met the next day. He wanted to meet. I said, well, we have an office for you here. Please come to the secretariat and let's discuss it. He was unhappy with me. So he wrote a very long letter of complaint about me, how I had been offensive, insolent, indisciplined to the president, which was the president, forwarded to me for my comments. And I said to the president, I want me to go to the vice president's house every morning at 8:30. Then you got the wrong guy. You better get somebody else. Either I go back to Calcutta now, or whatever, that's my problem. But I cannot be the chief executive and secretary, head of this association, and call on the vice president or president or whoever every morning at 8:30. I will, of course, brief him from time to time when required. But this is not my way of building a office bearer secretariat relationship. So there were a lot of meetings, consultations, joint meetings. I stayed. I stayed. And I think we built an understanding that we work with mutual respect, that the president and the office bearers will respect the secretariat because they are professionals, and we will respect the office bearer, and we will work together. So that is one, and that stayed, that lesson, that first 24 hours was critical in establishing that we are a professional secretariat. We are essentially an independent secretariat. We are not here at the whims and fancies of individual businessmen. We are here to do the work, but there's a red line which we will not cross. And one red line is we will not go to the guy's house at 8:30 in the morning to report to him. He can come to my office at 9:30 in the morning, and I will report to him. So that's one part. The second part about women, eventually what are we doing? We are a service industry, CII to me was, we are in the service business. And women, Indian women especially, because of their upbringing, because of the discipline they go through, you know, the Indian family upbringing is, the fathers and mothers think, unfortunately all three are men sitting here, that the sun is shining out of our backside, right? So, and the girl is subjected to all the discipline of the, but the girl internalize all of that. So they're actually very good at our work. They're extremely good at our work. So only this morning, there was a conversation at my sister's home. I don't know where she's sitting. She's sitting there. And my wife and myself about the women in CII. And how many women in CII, you know? But they were very good at their work. And so I had a huge number of women because they were very good. And of course there was pay parity. It's not like Deepika Padukone was getting less than Ranbir Kapoor. And I think they did. And so we had overseas offices headed by women, regional offices headed by women. Indrani is here somewhere, Indrani Kaur, who's been a regional director and is now heading the Center of Excellence here in Delhi. The Aspen India office here is headed by a woman, Rithashri. They're very good at what we do, so it was very important to have them there. It was difficult for many of the men in the secretariat, especially those who come from a different background, you know, to guys like me who've been to St. Xavier's and all of that, to accept this initially. So there was this MCP attitude, you know, what's going on here? But we got around that, and you can see it. You're saying you've got 17 and 17. That's even better than my ratio, the ratios at my time. That's terrific. I hope one day we'll have a woman as a Director General of CII.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn to you, Mr. President, and open it up for discussions. Any question from your side?
Yeah.
Are you talking about a woman as a Director General?
Yeah.
We are going to get our first president as a lady.
Yeah, that's
down
right.
The road.
Yeah.
Just thought of that. Tarun, you know, it was very interesting listening to you, and I'm going to try and bring in, a little bit of humor.
Sure.
You worked with, I don't know how many presidents, but many. And every president is an individual. Each guy is different. The guy has to mold to a great extent to the institution's requirements, which you portray. And you have to also mold to, you know, that guy's
Absolutely.
idiosyncrasies or whatever it is. I'd like to hear of some precedent. You don't have to give us name. You can just tell us the year. As, you know, something that, you know, as an individual that happened, which really is something that put you in a spot, was difficult to handle, but yet there was this, you know, humor in it. Would you recollect something like that?
Well, there was, you know, first of all, the Secretariat had a tremendous challenge at the end of an annual meeting when a new president was elected. So let's take 86, 87. Suresh Krishna, TVS Group, president, spent the whole year with the Secretariat traveling all over the country, completely focused on India, brand India, you know, big vision, big stories, connect with industry, connect with the world. And okay, the AGM finishes, Brij Mohan Lal takes over, chairman of Hero, great man, self-made man, very successful, does not want to have an incoming president's dinner. Can you believe that? You know, that end of the AGM, celebration, everybody, you know, having fun, relaxing, unwinding, and all of that stuff, call a lot of guests, you know, incoming president's celebration, everybody congratulates him and his wife, etc. No dinner. No, I don't want to celebrate this. This is, he was a very modest man. He was a wonderful man. But so for him to have a big party celebrating his presidency was just not on. But for us, it was like, what is this? What's happened here? What's happened to us? In fact, that evening, after the AGM, we were at home, Ranjana and I, and who should come in but Suresh Krishna and his wife, Usha, who the outgoing president and his wife, come in and to spend the evening with us. Normally we would have been in, some big party and all of that. So it blew the Secretariat's mind. We tried to persuade him, but he was absolutely clear. No personal kind of celebration. It is against my culture, my values, or whatever. So not about money, I mean, Hero Group, you can see what kind of money they have. But it's just about his beliefs that he did not want a big party, drinks, dinner, 5-star hotel, and all of that. So that's one kind of challenge that one has faced. The second kind of challenge was, if I take the same example, Brij Mohan Lal wanted us to focus on solving industry problems. So with Suresh Krishna, we were riding on cloud 9. We were all over the place, Rajiv Gandhi, ye, wo, conquering the world, accompanying the Prime Minister to Moscow, doing all that sort of stuff. Next minute, it was, what's the price of copper? What's the duty rate on steel, and all of that. So he said, our primary job in my vision is help the companies to solve their problems. And these are the problems. Let's have a list of them, and let's solve them one by one so that at the end of the year we can say, we've done all this for the membership. So again, you actually have to get out of one skin and get into another skin, as it were, because you got the Secretariat running, like in this direction, and suddenly you're saying now you've got to change direction and run the other way. I hope your successor doesn't do that. I hope he's listening somewhere to this. So those were some of the difficult adjustment problems. And then, of course, the problem of style. Each one, the president's, your style is different, Rajiv's style is different. So you go home after the AGM and the dinner or whatever, and you go to sleep, and you get up next morning, and you say, okay, now my new president is Rajiv Kaul, and he's different from Subodh Bhargav, who was his predecessor. You've got to, recycle yourself a lot in terms of style. Rajiv would be much more friendly, much more informal. Mrs. Mondira Datta is here. Her husband, Shekhar Datta, was the president. He was like a ball of fire every day, energy levels. He wanted to conquer the world every morning, right? And so our energy level had to come up too much. But I'll tell you one funny story. We are on the eve of the annual general meeting. Shekhar Datta is the president. Next morning, the Prime Minister, Deve Gowda, will inaugurate the AGM. And we are all sitting in the CII office in Lodi Road. The television is on, and we are last-minute things to be done, his speech we are working on. And suddenly they announce on the news, Pranoy Roy, that Deve Gowda has resigned. And the new Prime Minister is going to be Gujral, and he's going to be sworn in tomorrow morning, at the same time as the inaugural session of the CII AGM. Unbelievable. I mean, we just came from there right down to here. what do we do, what do we do? So we found out, we knew Mr. Gujral, of course. We found out where he was. He was in Andhra Bhavan with Chandrababu Naidu, who was Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh at that time. And three of us, Shekhar Datta, N. Kumar, the Vice President from Chennai, and myself, we went into Andhra Bhavan. There was a lot of security, there were a lot of cops around, but if you behave as if you own the place, you can actually go through. Nobody stops you. So we actually went through, and we went into the room where Chandrababu Naidu, Gujral, and others were discussing the cabinet allocation of portfolios. Closed room. And we went to Mr. Gujral and said, you know, we have an AGM tomorrow morning and you have to come and address the AGM. He said, but I haven't been sworn in yet. You know, I am not yet Prime Minister. He said, well, you swear, get yourself sworn in and come to CII after that. And three of us would not leave him. We were kind of gheraving him. The meeting stalled. Everybody was watching, what is this go? Of course, we were whispering to him. And he called whoever his PA was, some guy called Bhatia. And he told him in Punjabi that, you know, these guys want us to go. It's the AGM. Prime Minister was to go. I have to go. And would you believe it? I mean, he came. I mean, it's never happened that a Prime Minister of India gets sworn in, and he comes to the CII AGM. That happened that day. It was unbelievable, actually. So all kinds of funny things. You know, we used to say in CII, and I think I've mentioned it, that somebody up there looks after us, and somebody up there looked after us, because miracles happened in CII, beyond our, whatever we did. I mean, if you didn't have somebody looking after you, I don't think it could have happened. You can call it luck, you can call it whatever, but things worked out for us beyond reason.
So keeping on the lighter side, as you said, you know, one of the things that you have written about in your book is about, you've written hardly anything about yourself, but one of the things that you've written about in the book is about your shoes. You're looking at them now. And this story I'll leave to the person to ask or say is the person who's only person whose handwriting appears in the book, and that's Mr. Rajiv Kaul.
And he is mentioned 6 times in the book.
Yeah.
I think perhaps 6 times, Tarun, because I never once called you at 8:30 a.m. Never.
Yeah.
Not even on the phone.
The guy who called me at 8:30 is also in the book.
8:30 p.m. was the time we used to sort of talk about these things. But certainly, you know, I think I was vice president and I was very fortunate that, and so was Tarun, that both our wives were with us. It was at a delegation to Indonesia. We were in Jakarta, then we were in Bodh Gaya, and finally we were in Bali. We took the weekend off in Bali. And we were doing planning, etc., what needs to be done for our centenary year. And Tarun Das said, listen, Rajiv, you know, I think what we need to do is something spectacular. I said, yeah, great, you know, I mean, that's what we should do for 100 years. And brainstorming, etc., largely, you know, I mean, he's the visionary, not me, I'm the doer. And he said that, look, let us do the partnership summit. And that's something which is sustained over the next 30 years or whatever. And I think it's something which has brought about yet another flagship for CII. But at the same time, you know, I told him, I said, Tarun, those shoes of yours, you know, why don't you now get a different pair? You know, it'd be nice to change the pair. And he said, see, Rajiv, you've done all this planning. You want to have a good year, don't you? And I said, yeah, of course, every president wants to have a great year. He says, well, make sure that you never ever ask me to change my shoes again. Certainly not in your year, because these are very lucky shoes. So when he said that people from there are blessing us all the time, I think they have the ways of blessing from top. In his case, it's with the firm footing that he's got. But I think one thing I'd like to add, Tarun, to your many comments, and this is something which Shumit also says very often, that he's had a wonderful experience in CII. And so did I. I genuinely had a wonderful experience in CII. I learnt a lot. For me, it was huge learning, how to deal with bureaucrats, how to deal with ministers, how to deal with colleagues better, how to be sensitive to membership, how to deal with people who are much bigger than you, how to deal with people who are small-scale industry, how to be sensitive to their needs, and how to be sensitive and to reach out to them by solving their problems. A bit like what you said was Brij Mohanji's, requirement. And I think that perhaps also led you, Tarun, to setting up, the Quality Institute, the, various cost institute and the Environment Institute, and helping companies compete with the world, helping Indian companies compete with the world. And I think today, if many Indians are all over, it's not only because CII, right since early days of Rajiv Gandhi, wanted to get India and opening up to the world and letting also the foreign companies come in, but it's strengthening our membership and our member companies. And I think this joy, this happiness, this learning, this assistance in being able to do better, certainly is very encouraging for members and is a strong binding force for CII. Thank you.
I must say something here. When Rajiv was president, it's the only year in which both of us together were put on the cover of Business India magazine. But he was looking left and I was looking right. And the Business India was trying to project that there was a major difference between the president and, I don't know what I was called then, secretary or secretary general. And it was not so, of course, but there were conflicts about liberalization going on, and whether Ratan Tata wanted to open up and a Rahul Bajaj wanted to go slow and all of that. So Business India thought they would glamorize the whole thing by putting two of us on the cover of Business India. But it was fun time. It was really fun time.
Any questions, ladies and gentlemen?
In terms of relationship building with the government, in your time, you had faced two interesting challenges, one after emergency and another after Gujarat riot. Would you like to say something on those?
Well, actually, we formed the AII through the merger on the eve of the emergency. We didn't know the emergency was coming. The country was in depression at that time. There was a lot of trouble across the country. We moved to Delhi in November '74. The emergency was declared in June, but by February we had had our first trade fair. So we'd actually put started our branding of AII in Delhi pre-emergency. And when emergency was declared, we got a call to join a procession of businessmen to support the emergency. We didn't go. We were too small anyway, and I think people forgot that we didn't go. But we didn't go because we didn't feel that that was what we wanted to do. So 1975 to 77, were formative years for us in Delhi. We were very small, so we were not big players at all. Gujarat was different. We were having an event on Gujarat with the then Chief Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, in Delhi at the Meridian Hotel. And a question was asked at that meeting to the Prime Minister, now Prime Minister, then Chief Minister, about the law and order situation in Gujarat, which annoyed him a great deal. So when he went to Gujarat, that annoyance got reflected in the media a lot. And our members in Gujarat were very worried and very disturbed. So it became essential then for CII to review its relationship with the Gujarat government. Do we cut off from a state government? Any state government. So forget about that particular incident. Or do we continue to work with the state government? And the consensus, actually unanimity, was that we must continue to work with the state government because we have a large body of membership there. We have a large number of industries there who are part of our institution, and it was important to rebuild that relationship with the state government. And so I went to Gujarat after having written to the Chief Minister and met the Chief Minister at that time and called basically, called a close to that chapter. The facilitation for that meeting and for that thing was done by Mr. Jaitley, who was at that time a central government minister. I think he was Commerce and Industry Minister at that time and Law Minister. He helped to bring CII and the Chief Minister together. And I don't think we've looked back. I would fast forward now to the current time, last year and this year. We have Mr. Narendra Modi as Prime Minister. And I think the organization that, as I see from a distance, I'm not in CII anymore, but what I see from a distance is increasing trust in CII, increasing involvement of CII in issues concerning the country. So it makes me feel good that there is this recognition of CII's role in industrial development, in projecting India abroad, in policy making, in all of that. So I think all that is way behind.
Yes, please. Yeah. Deekaj?
Tarun, I have not interacted with you in CII as such, but I have seen from outside, because I was in Tata Steel all this time, and I saw the tremendous change that came about in the organization. I would just mention a small anecdote, is that first time we met, it was Madras, Connemara Hotel, and my boss, Ardesha Setna, was the Eastern Region President, and you came with him to Madras. And that's the first time we met. One question I have to ask you is this, that when this great change in Indian economy took place, that Manmohan Singh's the reforms, the great reforms, which was totally reversing everything that India was following all those days. In that transition, what role CII played to make this a permanent feature and lead to its continuity, which is even today felt?
I think that comes from an earlier remark I made about building trust. And I think when all these new policies were being made, I think the government involved us very deeply in all the internal private consultations. And I think CII has always followed the policy that you don't go out and talk about publicly what you're discussing in private. What is private, because that's the only way to retain trust. And I think that is what has been the hallmark. Incidentally, Mr. Setna was my first president in Indian Engineering Association. And he took over when his committee had represented to the Secretary of the Bengal Chamber that they were unhappy that he had appointed me as the Secretary of the Engineering Association because I was too young. I was 28 then. and the secretary of the chamber was a Scotsman called Bill Bryden, and he told the committee, including Mr. Setna, that he had taken a decision and I would stay there until I made a mess of the job. Fast forward 1 year, Mr. Setna, annual general meeting speech, basically read out the speech that we in the secretariat had drafted. Then at the end of the speech, he's standing there like the lectern, takes out a small piece of paper, his own handwriting I could see from, in those days the lectern was on the left. So I was sitting here and he was giving the speech. And he said that in his 32 years of being connected to associations and chambers of commerce, he had never experienced the quality of service that he had experienced the previous year. You know, the openness of Mr. Setna in that way was amazing, that he appreciated the work that had been done and could go back to a different position from where they were. I mean, in 28, I was the first Indian to be appointed as secretary of an association in the Bengal Chamber. And this is crazy. This is 1967, March. So that's 20 years after independence. After that, up to then, there were only Britishers who were there. But that's the way it is. But he was a wonderful man. First boss. Well, my first boss too.
Yeah, Mr. Viresh Oberoi, yeah. There, just.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Viresh Oberoi, and I think I missed out in not meeting you earlier, sir. I've been associated with CII now for the last decade in various roles, and like Rajiv mentioned, I've learned a lot from CII, and now I know that we owe a lot to you, sir. I will most definitely read your book. The question that I have for you is more in terms of what advice do you have to give to us? You've been talking about the role that CII played from its early days in building trust with the government and how that has succeeded greatly, and I see this happening every day. But what is your advice to us in terms of what we need to do to reach out to two other constituents who exist today? One is the opposition. What is your advice to us to reach out to the opposition? Because unless we engage with them, possibly we will not be able to move forward the way that we think we should be able to move forward. And the second is the people of the country, which is, again, another very strong constituent. What is your advice in terms of how do we reach out to the people to build this trust in industry? Because having said that, it is industry itself which is going to provide employment or should provide employment to 1 million people coming in every year. What is it that we need to do to build that trust?
You know, first of all, Viresh, it was a team effort in CII. It's still a team effort in CII. The secretariat are there 24/7, but the office bearers, people like you who are running their own businesses, very, very you're deeply connected into the system. Otherwise, if the two are not together, then we can't achieve what has been achieved. That's number one. So it's not one individual or another individual. The second is, I think they're doing it already. From what I hear, from what I see, I think that is being done, the dialogue with opposition leaders. The government is asking CII to talk to opposition leaders, from what I hear. And the government is using CII to be an interface with opposition leaders. I think that is being done out of government's trust in CII and the feeling that the opposition also trusts CII, so that they can be an intermediary on tricky things like passing the GST law and other similar laws. So I think you've got it made. I think the third part is the critical one. How do you connect with the people? Because people think business is bad. People think that ordinary people think businessmen are not honest. They are not for society. And I don't want to see government again coming with new laws, new policies, control remuneration, control emoluments, as it is, we've got too many controls as it is, and too many inspectors, etc. So I think their industry has to introspect itself and balance its own emoluments, balance its own standard of living, its own lifestyle a little bit. That's one. And second, when you see You see rural distress. Andhra, farmers dying. Maharashtra, suicides. I think there is a role there for industry and institutions, because industry is very creative in what it does. So think of what can you do to deal with poverty. Not giving away money. I'm not talking about money. There's enough money and enough corruption going on with the money. But what is it that industry, with its managerial ability, with its creative ability, with its whole way of knowing how to do things, deal with the common man's problem? So you're sitting in Calcutta, what can you do in Bengal? The Bihar members, what can they do in Bihar? Because these are all states where there's a lot of poverty. When you drive through Bengal, you see that poverty all over the place. So I think I would say that, because then if you can touch the common man's lives, you know, when there was an earthquake in Gujarat, we went and rebuilt parts of Bhuj. We rebuilt villages. I know of people who have come to me. Yesterday I met someone here who said she had been to Gujarat, she had been to Bhuj, and there's a plaque there that this village has been rebuilt by the Confederation of Indian Industry. That is something which which is something very, very special. So more of that. You're doing that when the tsunami hits, you're doing that in different ways, but maybe that has to be scaled up. Connect more with poverty, connect more with people who are in distress.
Yes, please, yes, there on that table.
Good evening, Mr. Das. Thank you very much for such an engaging kind of a session, and snippets about how to build up a great organization over a period of time. I'm born and brought up here, sir, in Calcutta, and like you, I'm a Zavarian. Was privileged to get one of the best education that Calcutta can buy. However, over the past 4 decades, it's common knowledge, everybody knows what's happening to Bengal. Coming back to, as far as industry is concerned, it was really gratifying to see this morning in the newspapers that ITC is coming up with, a few expansion projects, etc., etc. But going forward, we would need many more ITCs in Bengal, right? If you were given the opportunity, going back 4 decades ago, till the current time, as the industry minister of West Bengal, how would you have changed things in a certain perspective? Give me 3 points, sir. Thank you so much.
Well, I won't pretend or aspire to be the industry minister of West Bengal, but I give you my take on us Bengalis. I'm a Bengali. We don't like to work on the shop floor. We are not happy to being blue-collar workers. So when we had the jute industry and the engineering industry, the labor came, I think, largely from Bihar and UP and Punjab and elsewhere. My father used to be a labor advisor, and I used to see him dealing with labor and unions, so I got a first-hand feel of that. So now fast forward, we are in a different technology age. But there are at least 50 services sectors, different services sectors, not only IT. IT is already happening here. I would say if you think of all the services sectors which can be developed, I think Bengal is a great place to develop them. Because we like to do that. We like to sit in an office. We were the clerks to the British, right? So we like to be in an office. We like the IT industry, air-conditioned office. Our boys and girls are happy there. We don't want to dirty our hands. We don't mind dirtying our heads. So I think the services sector is something where I don't know whether anybody's developing a strategy in terms of here are all the services sectors. where are we in Bengal in these services sectors? And can we develop? And by the way, the services sector, you can have a guy or a girl setting up something with 5 employees, 10 employees, and generate a lot of income, a lot of revenue. So I think the services sector will bring employment, it will bring entrepreneurship, and it will bring a better quality of life in Bengal. That's one. And second, I don't think we should worry about having too many ITCs. So one ITC is great, and I don't think ITC will let you have too many ITCs. Mr. Deveshwar will see to that. But what you can do is, this is an agriculture state. We used to call it the granary of the East. This is Bengal. Drive through from here to Burdwan or whatever is a fields of green. So what about agriculture-related businesses? What about anything to do with agriculture? Anything to do with food? And again, look at small, look at medium, don't look at big. You don't have the land. You don't have so much territory. So focus on services and focus on what is your strength. As people, your strength is services, not manufacturing. As people, your strength, as resources, your strength is agriculture. Focus on that. If you do these 2 things, I think you could transform Bengal.
Yeah, stay with your table. Yeah.
My name is Vivek Kaul. Thank you for a very inspiring talk. I had just one question, that earlier you needed to have trust, the government to have trust in you as an organization. But in the interconnected world, it's not not anymore that governments are entirely in control of the economies. So where do you think that is there a need for thought leadership in the new world that we are in? And where do you think that might come from? Because when 3 automotive industry captains in the US went in their corporate jets and unfurled, and from their suits they brought out their begging bowls for a dole from the government there, it effectively took out the moral equation from capitalism quite strongly. So I'm just wondering where the thought leadership in the new world will come from, and your ideas on that, please.
I think it has to come from business people themselves. I talked about self-regulation, reviewing your own thing. So your corporate jet example is exactly what I mean. I mean, you're going for a loan from the government and you're going in your private jet. Because you are actually, if you got so much money to run a private jet, then maybe you don't need a loan. That's the way it was looked at. So I think lifestyles need to change. Read Raghuram Rajan. Read what Raghuram Rajan, the governor of RBI, said in Davos about this. He spoke on this issue. He said, if you are not able to repay the bank, why are you having a millionaire birthday bash? It gives the message that you're flush with money. So it's the same thing as your corporate jet example. But we have to change ourselves, no? Thought leadership we are all capable of introspection. We must be doing it every day of our lives about ourselves, our families, our work. And I think the people who are really wealthy and well off need to look at themselves. I think that's basically it. I don't think it should be mandated from outside, and I wouldn't want to see government's heavy hand of government coming into this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have actually run out of time. I wanted to thank each one of you for participating at this outstanding session. Thank you, Mr. Das, for sparing your time and coming over to Calcutta for this session. Thanks to Shogoto and Ritoshri and their teams from CII and Aspen, Ananta Center for putting this together. It was a great session, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in thanking Mr. Tarun Das for this lovely session that he has given us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.